What's up, you guys? It's Michael here with FPL Advice, and because we're basically done with 1/4 of the season, we've already completed 10 games and there's only 28 left to go. I figured it'd be good to kind of take a look at which teams have performed best defensively as well as offensively. See out of the 20 teams, which teams have been creating a lot of chances and creating a lot of shots on target, as well as which teams have been conceding a lot of chances and conceding a lot of shots on target. So we're going to take a look at that. We will also review the best teams with the best fixtures from game week 11 to game week 15, and also which players to target from those teams heading into game week 11. And lastly, we will also go over my game week 11 team selections so I can show you guys what I plan on doing heading into the weekend. But all right, let's get straight into it. The worst defenses in the first 10 games this year have been Newcastle, Norwich, and Watford, which I honestly don't think is a surprise to anyone. Newcastle and Watford have not kept a single clean sheet this year, and Newcastle and Norwich both have conceded more than 20 goals so far. I do have to say that I'm a little bit surprised to see Arsenal, Burnley, and Tottenham in the bottom 10, as Arsenal have kept 4 clean sheets this year. But that's due to their expected goal conceded statistic being so high. They've conceded a lot of shots on target, big chances, and goals in the first 10 games. So this is why they've been classified as some of the worst defenses so far this year. Tottenham have just released Nuno Espirito Santo and are working to sign Antonio Conte, who I do expect to improve Tottenham's defense if he is signed to be their next manager. As for the best defenses so far this year, I don't think it's a surprise to see City, Liverpool, and Chelsea in the top 5, but I would say it is surprising to see Wolves at number 2 and Crystal Palace at number 3 for the lowest expected goals conceded. I personally wouldn't say that Crystal Palace's defense is better than Chelsea's or Liverpool's, and I wouldn't go for their players instead of going for Chilwell or Trent, right? But I do think that if you need to find some funds to be able to get Son or Kane, I do think that players and defenders from Crystal Palace or Wolves might be a decent option, especially if they're going to be players that are your 4th or 5th option defenders. Looking at teams with the worst attack, I think Norwich are not a surprise to be in the last place with only 9.96 expected goals over the first 10 games. They've only scored 3 goals so far this year and have only created 9 big chances. So that is something to consider, that even though they have really good fixtures starting in game week 11, I don't know if it makes sense to go for attacking players if you want to go for Sargent or Pukki. The teams I was a little bit shocked to see in the bottom 5 were Newcastle, Tottenham, and Leeds. But as you can see, their expected goals over the first 10 games have been really poor, even though it seems that Newcastle have been on a tear offensively, as we've talked about Callum Wilson and St. Maximin performing so well this year. Newcastle have only scored 11 goals and only created 12 big chances so far this year. They have had only 29 shots on target, which is actually the second lowest in the league so far. Tottenham's another team that hasn't been performing well offensively this year, and I do believe that this was a big factor in the decision to sack Nuno. If Conte is appointed as their next manager, I think they will improve significantly, especially when it comes to being a better attack and creating chances and getting more shots on target. I think it's really exciting for FPL because we saw how great Lukaku was at Inter under Conte, and also how good fullbacks are under his style of play. So I think it's very exciting for FPL, and I think a lot of people will start to hop on Tottenham assets, especially with the fixtures that they have. And Leeds is another team I'm a little shocked to see do so poorly offensively this year. Last year they were so attacking, but this year, with all the injuries they've had, you can see that not having Bamford or Phillips for a decent amount of time has really affected the way they are lacking the ability to create chances. I do think this will change with players coming back. We already see Phillips back. Once Bamford comes back, I do think that they will pick things up and start kind of creating more chances and having more attacking returns. But until then, it is a risk to kind of pick up Rafinha or whoever else you might be interested in. As for the best attacking teams so far this year, it is no surprise to see Liverpool at number 1, then City, West Ham, Chelsea, and Man United. Southampton with the 6th highest expected goals was surprising to me. So for example, Leicester have scored 6 more goals than them, have 17 chances created versus Southampton's 15. Do take more minutes to create chances, but have had 47 shots on target versus Southampton's 33 shots on targets. So I wouldn't fully make my decisions based only on this chart. As for the fixtures, we should all focus on starting in game week 11. The teams with the best fixtures are probably Spurs, Norwich, Newcastle, and Brentford. If Conte is appointed Spurs' new manager, I think Son, Kane, and potentially one of their fullbacks become a really nice halves, especially starting in game week 11. because I think they can really do well and get you clean sheets and a lot of attacking returns. Norwich have Brentford away in game week 11, Southampton at home, then Wolves at home, and then Newcastle away. So if there's a time where you want to go for a cheap Norwich defender, this might be your time to kind of hope that they get you a clean sheet. Or if you think there's a time for a Pookie party this year, this is probably the best time to, as he is still not owned by a lot of FPL managers. Go for Pookie. As for Newcastle, Callum Wilson is now back and did play 90 minutes in the last 2 fixtures. So I think he becomes a serious consideration alongside Mankilo, who's only 4 million and is playing 90 minutes as a defender. Especially with Newcastle playing Brighton, Brentford, Arsenal, Norwich, and then Burnley in the next 5 fixtures. And then Brighton, Palace, Southampton, Brentford, Leicester all have really nice fixtures in the next 5 games outside of one maybe difficult fixture. So I think players from those teams are definitely ones that we should definitely still consider. As for the players to target, I figured it would be best to kind of take a look at the players only from the teams that we just looked at because they have a really nice run of fixtures. We all know that going for Trent, Chilwell, Reece James, Cancelo are great options and you should still have them in your team. But I know a lot of you are in the same position that I am in where we're looking to bring in cheaper players into our teams to be able to afford Son or Kane. So I'm hoping that I can help you figure that out and find a player that you want to go for each position. With defenders, there are a few players that really stand out, but it really comes down to whether you value clean sheet potential or the ability for a defender to get you attacking returns. For example, Matt Ritchie has created 24 chances so far this year. I believe being just behind Trent for amount of chances created, and his goal involvement is the highest on this list with 2.56, but he's also averaging only 1 point per game in his first 10 games. So as you can see, no one's really at the end of those chances. Newcastle are having a hard time keeping a clean sheet, hence the low amount of points per game he's receiving. I do think that with the fixtures that Newcastle have, there might be a clean sheet or two in that, but I just don't know if he's worth the 4.9 million where you can have Mankilo as your 5th bench player for only 4 million. My top 5 defenders on this list would be Cucurella at number 5. He's creating a lot of chances for Brighton, but he does cost 5 million. I think that if you have Sanchez in goal, or if you think that Lamptey is going to start playing 90 minutes in the upcoming fixtures, I would probably prefer going for Lamptey instead because he is so much cheaper. But for now, I think Cucurella is a phenomenal option, especially if you want a guaranteed starter and you need a cheaper defender. At number 4, we have Mankilo. Again, Mankilo is such great value at 4 million, but Newcastle have not kept a single clean sheet so far this year. So obviously going for him, you would kind of want to hope to have other 4 defenders on your team that are going to play and only have him play when he really is needed or when there's an injury. At number 3, we have Aarons at Norwich. Again, I think he's a great option, but only for a 4th or a 5th defender on your team. Aarons is probably their most attacking defender, so I do think he's a decent option at 4.3 million. He's created 8 chances and he's had 9 touches in the box, so I do expect that he will get some sort of attacking returns in the upcoming games, but I'm not entirely sure if he's going to get you clean sheets. At number 2, we have Livramento. He's absolutely nailed, and if you don't have him yet, that's okay. I still think it's a really good time to buy him, even though he is now 4.4 million. He's averaging 4.2 points per game and has the highest touches in the box alongside Jansen from Brentford on this list. And of course, Southampton's fixtures are pretty good, so definitely going for Livramento is a really good option. At number 1, it has to be Jansen. He's averaging 4.2 points per game and has an expected goal involvement of 1.96. Brentford's goalkeeper Raya is out for months, but they do have a decent backup goalkeeper who I expect to do quite well. So I don't think it's going to really affect their ability to not get clean sheets. And of course, Brentford have a really nice run of fixtures, so I think he becomes a really good option heading into game week 11. As for midfielders, the 2 that really pop out at you right away are Son and Gallagher. They've had an unbelievable start of the season. Gallagher is averaging 5.67 points per game, and Son is averaging 6.11 points per game. Both have a similar goal involvement over the first 10 games in the season. And with the fixtures that both teams have, I expect both to continue to perform, if not better than they already have over the first 10 games. Tielemans is another great option who's been performing so well so far this year. And if you don't want to have Vardy in your team, but you still want to have a Leicester player, Tielemans is your man. I mean, he plays 90 minutes every single game. He does not get subbed off. He's averaging 4.9 points per game so far, and he has a very high goal involvement of 3.69. So again, if you want to have a Leicester player in your team, but you don't want to go for Jamie Vardy, Tielemans is the player you should go for. Zaha gets a rating of 4 simply because Gallagher is much cheaper and is performing just as well, if not better. The advantage for going for Zaha instead is that Zaha is on penalties, but he loves to pick up yellow cards, and until Gallagher's form drops, I just don't really see a valid reason to pick Zaha over Gallagher. And the 5th best midfielder I think you should consider is Trossard, who has been extremely good this year so far. He's Brighton's most creative player and set-piece taker. He's had 43 touches in the box and is averaging 8 shots on target, only topped by Gallagher and Son. With Brighton's fixtures, he's a really good differential, especially since he's only owned by 1.3% of FPL managers. And up top, the 2 players that really pop out are Ivan Toney and Jamie Vardy. I mean, both players have had great starts so far in the first 10 games. Vardy has dropped in form over the past few games. He picked up a little injury, so that's okay, though. I do expect that he will still do well over the next upcoming fixtures, as Leicester do have good fixtures coming up. And this is why I also have him as my number 1 pick heading into game week 11. If Conte is appointed, Kane becomes a phenomenal option as well, though. And potentially some could argue that he becomes a better option than Jamie Vardy. Over the past few years, we've seen what Kane can do, but also we saw how good Lukaku performed at Inter under Conte. So if he can be half as good as Lukaku was at Inter, I think that Kane will really get you amazing returns in the upcoming fixtures. Ivan Toney, as you all know, is an absolute steal at 6.6 million. He has the 2nd highest goal involvement on this list of 4.51, so I expect him to do extremely well. And the fact that he's so cheap, I think he's definitely a great option heading into game week 11. Callum Wilson is back in the team and is already getting the ball rolling, hence why I have him as my number 4 pick. He's averaging the 2nd highest points per game on this list. Newcastle have a great run of fixtures, so I definitely think he becomes a really great option for game week 11, especially as he's only owned by 1.6% of FPL managers. And we know that with him playing 90 minutes, he'll run the show instead of St. Maximin, so he is a really good option. And at number 5, we have Adam Armstrong. Southampton have a really nice run of fixtures, and they've been very attacking recently. With Broja being injured, I expect him to play 90 minutes, and as you can see, he's been performing extremely well, especially when he's been playing. So I do think that he should be considered for game week 11. As for game week 11, I head into the week with 0 money in the bank and 1 free transfer. So for now, my goal is to simply roll my transfer. I will start Ramsdale in goal against Watford, Cancelo against Man U, have a Chelsea double up against Burnley. I'll then have Livramento playing against Villa at home. In midfield, I'll start Salah against West Ham, Foden against Man U, and then an Arsenal double up against Watford. Up top, I'm really hoping that Jimenez and Vardy can get the job done and give me some returns as Wolves play Crystal Palace and Leicester play Leeds. So the biggest question I have is whether I should play Antonio or not. I could swap him for either Smith Rowe or Saka, or even Foden or Cancelo against Man U. Liverpool at home is not an easy fixture, but with how attacking West Ham have been over the past couple of games, honestly over the past year, right? Every single game they're so attacking, they're creating so many chances that I do think that Antonio can still get some sort of returns against Liverpool. So right now he's my first player off the bench, but I am still thinking about considering putting him in my team. And as I mentioned already, my plan is to simply roll my transfer into game week 12 because there is an international break in between game week 11 and game week 12. So I think having 2 free transfers in game week 12 will be really helpful, especially if some of my players do get injured over the break. But that's all I have for you today. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to give it a like and also subscribe to the channel if you're new to FPL Advice. Let me know in the comments what you're doing heading into game week 11, and also let me know what you think I should do with Antonio, or if you do have him in your team, are you planning on playing him or are you going to leave him on the bench? Again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time.